Okay, so I didn't like this arc. This is, I would say, the first time since arc 6 that I just thoroughly disliked an arc pretty much in its entirety. Again, with other arcs, there've been some I felt was more okay, or man, there's a part here I really don't like, but the rest of it is really good. As I was reading arc 25, listening to it more technically, but as I was going through it, I had this consistent sense that I should take another break because, man, this story is really, really long. And I know I'm in the home stretch. I know I'm almost finished. But I need to take a break. And I was thinking to myself, but why? I'm so close to the end. And I know there's going to be some cool shit, some shit I'm really looking forward to. Why should I stop? I didn't think that while reading 24. I didn't really care for 23, but I wasn't thinking, man, I need to take a break, or like almost any of these arcs since I started reading Worm again. Why does this arc, why is it almost breaking me? And I think it's for me because the arc feels like filler. I talked about this a bit in 23, where I'm like, there's stuff happening, but I'm not getting particularly invested because it's throwing a bunch of characters at me. A lot of them I'm just thinking, I genuinely don't know if I need to get invested in you. And there's already so many characters and plot threads in the story that I've already been invested in. I'm sorry, I just don't care right now. And I felt kind of bad about that, but it was what it was. But I also understood why this arc needed to be there. Now that Taylor has she's gone from Skitter to Weaver, we have to show that transition. It's like, this is what it is like to be a ward. I didn't get super into it, but I get it. I didn't get arc 25. You know that thing people say about meetings? You're like, this could have been an email. For me, arc 25 just felt like this could have been an interlude. Not one interlude for the whole thing, but maybe a couple. The chapter starts with that meeting with Taylor, Glenn, and the PRT, their council or whatever the fuck. That feels like that could have been an interlude. I mean, they kind of started getting to it at the end of 24. I don't know if Glenn gets his own interlude later, but maybe this could have just been Glenn's interlude. Or again, with how weird that last interlude was. It's here's a scene with someone, here's a scene with someone. Maybe this just could have been another last scene. Then you get the first chapter of Taylor, her, what's the word I want? Not introduction, her orientation, that's it. Kind of her orientation into her team, who she's already met a couple times already. And there was the dick joke, and I don't know, that was kind of fun, and that was it. There's some training, her and Theo running and shit. I'm like, okay, it feels like it was trying. I feel like the point of this arc was to show her relationship with her new teammates, Theo in particular. And while it's there, it's not particularly strong. Which, to be fair, I think is kind of the point. Is at this point, she's been with the wards longer than with the Undersiders, but the Undersiders are the bonds that really matter. It's not that she dislikes her ward teammates, she doesn't, but it's just not the same. But even then, I mean, if you're gonna, show me these relationships, but they're not gonna really, and again, I don't know if that's just me, that these relationships didn't really connect. I mean, there's that whole scene when they're, it's not a game show, and they're on a talk show. That was fun. I liked that. But I'm also kind of thinking, why is this here? Do I need this? And yes, I know important shit happens at the end of the talk show, and even then, wouldn't it have been way cooler as an interlude? What was its name? Konsu or some shit? The time distillation, timey-wimey teleporting space endbringer? Wouldn't have been way cooler where instead of oh, we're getting a report of the fourth Endbringer, now we're seeing it. It's just, Maybe it's a Japanese cape. Maybe it's just like some tourist in Japan who's there at ground zero when this thing shows up, and like the live reaction to seeing it. That would have been so fucking cool. It's like, I think as an interlude, I might have liked that a little bit more. And then there's the time skip, which just kind of happened. And again, it made me feel like, okay, this arc feels like it was... The whole arc was just spinning its wheels. Because it feels like not a lot happens. Like, we don't even see the other two Endbringers appear. Like, as it happens, it's just Taylor watching a feed and going like, okay, this is when those two showed up. You kind of just could have done that with Khonsu as well. I don't know. I was bored reading it. Like, there's this whole chapter of Taylor having this, like, specific plan. Like, you know, like, I gotta do shit. You know, I gotta prove my worth. You know, I gotta do big things. You know, like, classic Taylor. So she, like, gets this plan in place, you know, gets it approved, at least approved enough, to go take on a local gangster. He's topsy-turvy because he can fuck with gravity. And they fuck with him and his gang, see? And I didn't give a shit. Was it cool? Yeah, because a dude who can, like, rotate the world, like, up and down or sideways and shit, that's fun. That's super neat. This is Arc 25. We're approaching an endgame. And I don't really know what the endgame is. Like, again, because of spoilers, my understanding, and maybe I'm even wrong about it, is that Scion is the final boss for whatever reason. And I know we have to deal with the 9 and that. And there's also other Endbringers. Like, I don't really know what the endgame is. I'm not even sure if I can quite see it forming. Why the fuck are we spending like an hour-long chapter fighting some random gangsters in Chicago? Like, if we just got to the time skip and like cut 25 and went straight to 26, and there was just a chapter, sorry, my brain stopped for a second, and there was just, sorry, the last chapter is the 2-year time skip. It is Taylor looking at a screen, seeing all the different, like, the new Endbringers and shit, and then she is in Brockton Bay. It's now her birthday, she's 18, and she visits her teammates again. There's a memorial to Regent with all of Heartbreaker's rings there because Imp killed Heartbreaker. And that kind of made me mad. Not that she killed him, but the fact that I didn't see it. There was a while ago, I think it was around when Accord became part of the story. Because I remember saying, when he was first introduced in, whose interlude? Or sorry, it was in Trickster's interlude, which is an entire arc, and that arc is great. I was like, okay, this is just some cool world building. This dude's probably not super important. Then in Blasto's interlude, he showed up again, and I was like, okay, they've shown him twice now. I think this guy's gonna matter. Oh no, I think he's dead. And then he shows up later in Brockton Bay. I'm like, oh, I guess he survived. He is important. Okay. You know, they've mentioned Heartbreaker a couple times as Regent's dad and how he's not protective, but he's very possessive of his children. And you know, there might be a point when he comes back to collect Regent. What's Regent gonna do when that... It's not like he's close to his dad, but is he gonna be like, fuck it, I'm gonna stay, or fuck it, I'll just go and avoid conflict? How are the rest of the team gonna react to Heartbreaker coming back? That's really interesting to me. Boy, I can't wait to see this. Like, this is being built up and foreshadowed, and it's either at the end of 23 or the start of 24. I didn't mention it because I forgot it, unfortunately. Is they mention Heartbreaker has come back into town. Like, he's in Brockton Bay for Regent. He hasn't made a move yet, but we'll deal with that when we get back, and then Regent's dead. Boy, I would like to know how Heartbreaker reacted to that. Like, does he feel any sort of grief over the loss of his son? Does he feel any grief over the loss of his possession? How much does he blame the Undersiders for this? Like, how does this escalate? Boy, I would love to see how this plays out. And like, no, you just don't. Sorry that you were looking forward to it. You just don't. Man, that sucks. I would have rather seen this. That felt like it was being built up and had a lot of emotional stakes to it rather than random gangsters in Chicago or the talk show. Again, as like fun as the talk show was, just could I have gotten shit that mattered? Because this arc doesn't feel like it mattered. Now, there is one scene though that I feel like this, and again, it probably could have been someone's interlude. We've seen Taylor and other people's interludes. Like, this really didn't need to be from her perspective, I suppose. Is the meeting with Cauldron, where it's not everyone is here, but a lot of people are here. Here's the Undersiders. Here's some of the big people in the PRT. The big three of Cauldron, Fault Line's crew, the people in the birdcage, this badass African warlord. It's like, I don't remember her name, but that was cool as fuck. And now it's like, like all the people in the birdcage are here. And they're all like subservient to the Fairy Queen. I'm like, this is neat. I liked that chapter a lot. And it's more, I don't know how much I've actually talked about this in previous videos. There was a point early on where I had said, like, I think it's like when we first hear about Cauldron, that was Battery's interlude, I think. I don't remember what arc that was. I think that was like right before the Slaughterhouse 9 or very early into the Slaughterhouse 9, where I kind of said to myself, okay, we have a main antagonist. The Endbringers are just kind of like an act of God and a force of nature you have to deal with. The 9 are a problem whenever they show up. Cauldron's the main antagonist. And as the story went on, I kind of started to shift that and think, Cauldron's not the main antagonist. They're kind of the main heroes of the story. They're the Varys. They're the Oberstein. They are that person that says, I am here focusing on the big picture. I am here to save the world. Humanity be damned. They are not good people, but they have good intentions, but will do anything to see those intentions come to fruition. So, like Taylor on a much larger scale, which, in that regard, I think kind of makes them interesting foils to each other. I'm actually very interested in learning more about Dr. Mother and who she is as a person. I mean, saying that out loud, I'm like, Is there any possibility, because we are dealing with multiverses, could she be Taylor from like another universe or some shit? Like, just saying it out loud of like, like, I'm a good person and I'm trying to save the world and I'll do whatever it has to make that happen. Like, that does actually sound remarkably like Taylor. I don't think that's gonna happen. There's that little part of me that goes, maybe there's a chance, because that'd be wild and kind of fun. But anyways, I don't think they're the main antagonists of the story, as shitty as they are. But, or excuse me, it's not a but. It's this chapter of them having this meeting of the mind, saying like, all right, we're providing the forum. Everyone needs to talk. What cards are you willing to play? Yes, we have cards we're willing to play. We won't play them here. What do you mean you won't play them here? Jack's gonna like end the world. Like, I understand that. This is not a big enough situation to play our cards. The fuck you mean this isn't a big enough situation to play your cards? Don't worry about it. And they're trying to negotiate, like the birdcage is trying to negotiate, like, can you let us out? And Chevalier saying, no, we as the PRT will not fucking allow that to happen. Like, I liked this chapter a lot. Could it have been someone's interlude? Like, I think that's, for me, what 25 feels like. It feels like Arc 17 or Arc 9. Trying to remember if there's another arc like that. I'm not sure. Where it's just not focused on Taylor. It's Trickster's entire backstory. It's here's all of the Brockton Bay wards getting their own interludes. It to me that's what it feels like it should have been. Here's an interlude showing Taylor's meeting from the perspective of the PRT heads, because I honestly think that would have been more interesting. Because this was just, I've seen this before from Taylor. I'm right, they're wrong. These rotten adults, they're not gonna listen to me, so I'm gonna do things in my own way. Insert Persona 5 Kids Next Door joke here. And again, I talk about how Taylor's flaws make her, to me, a more interesting character, and I don't deny that. Her flaws can also make her kind of annoying at times. And I feel like it's like, did I learn anything new about Taylor from this interaction? No, she did the exact shit she always does. Seeing it from their perspective, I think would have made it a little more interesting, especially as the guy says at the end, you made no friends here today. And I hope you realize that. And Taylor's like, I mean, none of you guys were on my side anyway, so it doesn't matter. And him kind of saying, that's not really the case, but now we're all your enemies. Like, seeing it from the perspective of someone who's like, I really want this Weaver experiment to work, but I have my compunctions. What should we do? And then by the end going, no, this is a terrible decision. Like, I think that would have, like, we still would have gotten the scene. I think it would have been more interesting. I mean, Theo's already had an interlude, but I mean, Colin's had at least two. So, if you want to do, like, the training and the bonding from his perspective, I think that could have worked. Maybe it's from another member of the Chicago wards, like the introduction or whatever the fuck. I still think Konsu showing up in Ground Zero would have been really fucking cool. Fuck, I mean, like, I said I want to see the Heartbreaker shit. Maybe we could have gotten a Heartbreaker interlude of, like, his perspective in Brockton Bay as all this shit is going on, and it ends with him being killed by Imp. That might have been sick as fuck. It's a combination of missed opportunities and spinning its wheels. And I feel like the point is that it's spinning its wheels with Taylor going, there's a lot of shit that's going to happen. I don't know what's going on with the Endbringers. The 9 are on their way. What the fuck? I need to do some things. I don't want to just sit still. But I, as the reader, am like, this does not feel like this is that important. Can we just get to the good shit? And then it's like, all right, now here's a time skip so we can get to the good shit. I'm like, why didn't we just do that in the first place? That's how I felt reading it. And it was really frustrating and unfun. I'm going to take this pin out because I'm not taking a break. I'm like halfway through arc 26 because it's really fucking good. You know why? Because this shit feels important. And that's what it is. I mean, like, I've said consistently throughout Worm. I'll say it again consistently throughout Worm. I don't get as invested in the fights and, like, the actual blocking and what's going on. Just me personally, I think they're cool. I think the powers are really cool. Sometimes there's shit that really sticks out to me, like something I just read of, hey, there's 8 Siberians and the Mantins are all in this cube that was seemingly made by Mannequin. How do we get through that? Well, a dude dropped a building on it. It's like, oh, that was neat as fuck. Or there's a scene where they're like, okay, like, we're dealing with a bunch of enemies, and, like, some of them are invisible, and some of them can make illusions. What the fuck do we do? Could Tessa and the Number Man just show up, pull out their guns, Pulp Fiction this shit, refuse to elaborate, and leave? That was sick as hell. There have been a lot of cool moments in the fights that have stuck out to me, but I'm still invested here because I understand the significance of what's going on. It's not like, hey, I gotta go fight this Chicago gangster who we've never heard of before, probably never shows up again, I say, and then he'll be, like, super important, like fighting Scion, I don't know. But it's this guy who's, like, probably never gonna show up again because Taylor needs a big thing on her resume compared to all the shit going on in 26. Speaking of interludes, I need to talk about bone saws. This is something I had not said in a previous video, but I've been thinking it for a while. That I was really hoping Bonesaw would never get an interlude. Because I was thinking, like, if there's one character in Worm that I don't want to know their backstory, I want to know nothing about this character, it's Bonesaw. Because it's like, partly it's that little sense of, I don't want to know what turned you into that, because it's going to be super fucked up, but it's also just, I just don't want to know what turned you into that. I think it makes you more fun and more interesting. And her interlude is essentially, Jack killed her parents. Bonesaw maybe could have saved her mom. Excuse me, but she didn't. And her mom told her in her final words to be a good girl. And Bonesaw is just trying to be a good girl. Be a good girl for Mr. Jack. Have a lot of fun. Make friends. Don't swear. And while all the other 9 go into stasis, she doesn't. She's like, look, I actually don't trust that shit. And someone needs to make sure we're all okay. So I'm just going to chill for 2 years. And she ends up like going in and out of a portal. Makes a friend who has a bit of a thing for her. And she kind of starts to realize that, wait a second, I'm actually like super fucked up, and like I don't feel guilty about the things that I've done, but I can tell that I don't feel guilt, and I think that's bad. And starting to make a distinction between Bonesaw, her passenger, and Riley herself. And I do actually find that really interesting. And, you know, we get all the Slaughterhouse 9 at the end, and there's 9 of every member with 3 exceptions. It seems like there's only one Jack, because Jack doesn't want anyone else cloned. That makes sense. One Gray Boy, because Jack's like, one's enough. And only one Bonesaw, because she was trying to clone herself, and it just wasn't quite working out. She couldn't... It seemed like it was kind of a vibe thing, too. I liked it, but I didn't like it, because again, like, I don't want to feel sorry for Bonesaw. It's like, she's a child. I get that. She's also a fucking monster. To me, Bonesaw, it's kind of like with Jack as well. Like, this is a character who I feel like is more interesting the less I know about them. I don't know how much of Jack's backstory we really get, or like about his trigger event, like what would turn someone into Jack Slash. The one thing about Jack I find I really fucking love is whenever they talk about passengers, and like the reason Jack is so dangerous is because he and his passenger are just on the same wavelength. And I think that's wild and super interesting. But I thought her interlude, like, it wasn't bad. It's setting up that Bonesaw is starting to consider turning on Jack. Contessa had a conversation with her. It was like, you're gonna help us. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. Bye. And it really that's kind of what started to get her thinking, is like, you know, like, Jack did kill my family, and, you know, maybe he's not a good person. Maybe I'm not a good person. What's the difference between me and my passenger? And it's kind of interesting. I guess for me, it's just like, I don't think it's the direction I wanted to see this character go, so I'm not super on board, but at the same time, as we see it develop, I might be more of like, no, okay, that was really cool. Because I don't know what happens to Jack or Bonesaw. I don't want to know until I get there. I don't know what I want to have happen to Jack and Bonesaw. Like, there's a part of me that says, is it a better end for Jack if he doesn't die, but he's just, like, stuck in prison forever? Where it's like, no, like, fuck you. You don't even get to die. Or it's like, if he gets this very ignoble death, like, he doesn't go out in this big fight, or it's not this big artistic end. Like, if Jack deadass, like, slipped on a banana peel, cracked his head, and died, like, that's some Saturday morning cartoon shit, for sure. But what if he didn't get this, like, big, crazy death? He just kind of goes out like a bitch. That might be more satisfying in its own way. Like, I don't know how I want them to deal with Jack. I have no idea what I want them to do with Bonesaw. But, we'll see. Like I said, this arc just really didn't do it for me. But I'm halfway through the next one, and it's fucking great. I'm glad I wasn't listening to that little voice saying, maybe this story's a little long, maybe you need to take a break. fuck that shit. We're gonna go as we go. So, yeah, an arc 26 is fucking going.